Hi, I'm Reggie Ponder, the Reel Critic. I'm here with Andrew Heckler for the movie Burden.
The weapons that we use to fight fear, they're not brutality, they're not wrath, they're not hate. They are and will always be love. We're in the midst of an epidemic right here in Lawrence.
Done a lot of bad things in my life. Things I now regret.
If you truly want to leave the Klan, then your first step is admitting what you've done.
He needs to go back to where he belongs.
Some of these people are my family.
Look where it got you.
Andrew, there's so much to actually talk about when we look at this movie, and I get the added benefit of having read the notes and all the stuff that you went through, but my listeners don't. And my first question really is, come on, man, this story, what got you to say, I'm going to spend my life learning about this story and learning about these people?
I just think that when I first read the blurb, when I first saw in 1996 that someone was opening up a KKK museum in a small southern town square, I just thought that was insane. I just did. In 1996, that kind of overt bigotry and racism just really struck me. But then, before I got to research that fully, I read another article that says Klansman sells KKK museum to Black Baptist minister, and I almost fell off my chair. I just thought, you hear about the incredible true story. This is an incredible true story, and, it really is a story that's very simple about love conquering hate. But then, you realize that that's just a headline. There's so much more to a story like that, the struggle and sort of the burden that everybody carries in the movie, from Mike Burden, who has to leave the Klan, to Judy Burden, who loves him up enough to get him to even think about leaving the Klan, and then to the Reverend Kennedy, the Black Baptist minister, who takes him in.
So it's really kind of funny because you just said that it's a simple story, but it's not a simple story, because when you look, just starting with your first two characters, when you look at Mike and Judy, and your actors, by the way, Garrett and Andrea, the chemistry that they had there. I got like 5 questions in one, right? I want to ask you about the chemistry, but I want to first just go back to how not simple it is. Here's a woman who's going to bring this guy around her child. There's a lot going on there with that relationship and her trying to think, should I do it, should I not? And you were able to capture that.
Yeah, what you're right, it's not a simple story. And the reason that I spent so much time down in Lawrence, South Carolina, getting to know the Reverend and his congregation, getting to know Mike, getting to know Judy, is because that's when it gets interesting. I wasn't telling the story about good and evil. If you do that, you put masks on, capes on, you have them fly off into space. This is a story about people, and these people are complicated. And so what I try to show is that, yeah, the message is simple. The story is not. And so I really I made it a point to humanize everybody from the congregation of the church all the way to Mike Burden and the Klansmen.
So in talking about how not simple it is, it's not simple for the Reverend and his son. So when you look at the characters who played that, which is Academy Award winner Forrest Whitaker and then Dexter Darden, they have some real issues there too, and you are able to convey the generational divide and also maybe even the spiritual divide that's happening between the two.
Oh, for sure. There was, I had heard that at that point, the Muslim Brotherhood was just starting to become alive and well in people's hearts and minds. And so, they were about, the younger generation of African Americans was about, let's fight back. Let's not take this anymore. The older generation, especially the Christian and religious generation, was, let's turn the other cheek, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Maya Angelou. Let's try to love or at least forgive until they come over. So there was a lot going on. Let's not forget Crystal Fox, who plays the Reverend's wife. When you have actors that are this talented, literally they came on set and became a family. it was very easy for me to just sort of sit back and watch them go. And they went, you know.
And when you talk about your actors, one of the things is how they conveyed this Klan's world. Because I know since you studied this, I think you wanted to really show how easy it was to get kind of sucked into there and how easy it was to stay there. Can you talk about how leaving one family requires having another family? Because I think you showed that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is, in a weird way, it's a coming-of-age story. But, you know, truthfully, Mike Burden is one of the toughest guys I've ever met in terms of what we think of tough. But he's also one of the most vulnerable people I've ever met. You know, he was vulnerable by economics. He was vulnerable by the abuse that he took as a child. And so he was ripe to be sort of hijacked or kidnapped into this family. Because whether we want to see it or not, and I mean it, whether you want to see this or not, that looks like family. It feels like family. But, you know, families are built on actually love. These families are built on hatred, which is sort of still the same feeling, but it's only skin deep. You know, a family built on love takes work, it takes effort, but it goes all the way to the heart, so it's more rewarding. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it was very challenging for me to try to, against all odds, show that these people, you know, I took the hood off the Klansman, and lo and behold, there's someone there. You know, there's a person under there. How did Judy see that person? How did Judy was able to realize that there's someone good inside that person who's wrapped in a Klan hood?
And when you say you took the hood off not just him. You took the hood off the other folks. And I think that people might be upset that you humanized them, but I think that that's what you were trying to do, is so you could show how people can kind of fall into the Klan's life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, right now we're in a point in time, and we probably always have been, but right now it's really stark, where we just want to call people names. We want to go to our corners, call people names, and that's all we want to do. You know, this movie challenges you to sort of go, wow, okay, there's more to the story, and I need to be looking for that. I need to open my eyes and open my ears and sort of look for that, because I can't tell people to forgive. I can't. That's up to the individual. But what I can tell you is that the opposite is a one-way, you know, it's a one-way street that dead ends in hatred. And so, you know, that's hopefully the message that resonates in the movie. And, yeah, it's not easy. You know, and I also try to humanize the Reverend. You know, we can all think of him as, you know, very Christ-like, because he is. I mean, it almost seems too much that he's doing this much. I say he's overcompensating, you know, because he's trying to be the Reverend David Kennedy. But deep inside, there's David Kennedy. And David Kennedy is a man.
I love what you did with him. In fact, is that there was the fight within himself, and I love that you showed that he wasn't just this guy who's saying, "Okay, we're going to follow this path," because he was having that struggle.
Yeah, that wasn't easy for him. I mean, you know, to take this man in, to bring him into his family, his congregation, you know, that is really challenging on a person. You know, David Kennedy's uncle was lynched. David Kennedy's parents, his grandparents, they all faced overt racism and bigotry. They faced things that were, you know, and that has to seep into a man. The Reverend, the minister, you know, in order to preach, in order to believe what he's believing, has to do this. He's trying to make a statement to himself, and it works. So, yeah, so it seems incredible and unbelievable, and he's too good. It wasn't easy. And that's why we talked about, you know, the easy story. It's not an easy story. It's not a simple story.
So before I let you get out of here, we want people to see this film. If you were going to make your pitch to why folks should come see this film at this time in life, because it happened a while ago,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Well, I think, that, like I said, you know, it's easy for us now to just get in our corners and be polarized. It's easy to call names and not want to dig into yourself. It's easy not to look in the mirror. But I will say this. You can dismiss this movie, but I think you're making a mistake. If you actually believe in Gandhi, if you believe in Martin Luther King's words, if you believe in Maya Angelou's words, then you will go see this movie, because the movie at its core is about you can never turn an enemy into a friend through hate. You can only turn an enemy into a friend through love. And that's the solution. And this movie does not make it easy, because that would be disingenuous. It's hard. It's hard work. But I think the country, the world, we have to look in the mirror and start doing it, and look at our neighbor or our enemy and going, you're a person. How can we have a conversation?
So my time is like almost up. They're over there waving, saying no. But what made you have to? You wrote it, but what made you have to direct it?
You know, this has always been part of my personality ever since I was a little kid, to tell these stories about injustice. And I spent a lot of time in the South as a kid, a lot, in a tiny town called Milan, Georgia, which I still haven't found anybody who knows where it is. But we did. And, I just felt that this was a tale that needed to be told because it's a metaphor. I think, it's a metaphor for what's possible. That these 3-4 people in a congregation were brave enough to do this gesture. And it just stuck with me to the point where after meeting them all, I felt an obligation to get this story out to the public.
So you heard it here. I'm Reggie Ponder, the Reel Critic. I'm here with Andrew Heckler. The movie is Burden. It's in theaters now. You can go see it, right?
Yeah, it opens more widely tomorrow, Friday, March 6th, and then the next weekend even more.
But maybe one day y'all can forgive me. Hope God can forgive me.